I am Bridget, 32 years old, and a senior project manager at a prestigious tech company where I dedicated 5 years of my life. I never expected that an excruciating abdominal pain during an important meeting would change everything. One moment I was presenting to potential clients, the next I was collapsing to the floor, rushed to emergency surgery. What hurt more than the physical pain was hearing my boss Gregory refuse to visit me, choosing a company retreat instead. If you are watching this, please let me know where you are viewing from. Hit like and subscribe to find out what happened when I returned to work 2 weeks later to find someone else at my desk. My journey at Innovatech Solutions began 5 years ago when I joined as an entry-level project coordinator. I still remember my first day carrying a small plant for my desk and wearing my best business suit, nervous but determined to prove myself. Gregory Wallace, the CEO, shook my hand firmly and said, "Welcome aboard. Show me what you can do." Those words became my driving force. Within 18 months, I had been promoted twice, finally reaching the position of senior project manager. It was not an easy climb. I would arrive at 6:30 a.m., 2 hours before most of my colleagues, and often stay until 9 or 10 at night. Weekends became extensions of my work week. I canceled dates, missed family gatherings, and postponed vacations. My last actual vacation had been 3 years ago, a quick weekend trip to a nearby beach where I still answered work emails. Gregory was someone I genuinely admired at first. His leadership style was demanding but inspiring. He had built Innovatech from a small startup into a company with over 200 employees in just 8 years. His vision for technological innovation and market disruption resonated with me. In meetings, he would pace around the room, gesturing enthusiastically as he talked about changing the world through our software solutions. I wanted to be part of that vision. My dedication paid off in tangible results. I secured the Meridian contract worth $3.5 million after weeks of negotiations. The Richardson project was failing when I took it over, but I turned it around and delivered it 2 weeks ahead of schedule. Last year, I brought in Apex Industries, now our biggest client, with annual renewals worth over $4 million. Gregory recognized my achievements with bonuses and praise during company meetings, but never with promotions beyond my current role or substantial raises that matched my contributions. At work, I had formed a few close friendships despite my intensive schedule. April from the marketing department always brought me coffee when she knew I had been working all night. Thomas, another project manager, became a trusted colleague who would cover for me during the rare occasions when I needed a few hours off. Diana from accounting would join me for quick lunches when we both found ourselves with a spare 30 minutes. The biggest project of my career was just beginning to take shape. The Maxwell Corporation, a Fortune 500 company, was considering our enterprise software solution for their global operations. If secured, this contract would increase our annual revenue by 30% and establish us as a major player in the industry. Gregory had entrusted me with leading the pitch, saying, "If anyone can land this, it is you, Bridget." My personal life had shrunk to accommodate my professional ambitions. I lived in a small but expensive downtown apartment chosen primarily for its 15-minute commute to the office. My morning routine involved waking at 5 a.m. for a quick run, followed by checking emails before even showering. My refrigerator contained mostly takeout leftovers and protein shakes. My parents, living in Arizona, had grown accustomed to my brief phone calls and canceled visits. "We understand you are busy building your career," my mother would say, though I could hear the disappointment in her voice. Looking back, the warning signs were there. Occasional migraines that required me to shut my office door and work in darkness. Persistent tension in my shoulders that no amount of stretching would relieve. 3 colds in the span of 2 months because my immune system was compromised from stress and lack of sleep. When Diana suggested I looked exhausted and should take a day off, I laughed it off. "The company needs me," I said. "There will be time to rest later." The week before everything changed, Gregory announced our annual company retreat would be held on Thursday, coinciding with my scheduled presentation to the Maxwell Corporation representatives. "You will have to handle the meeting without the rest of the executive team," he told me casually. "But I know you will nail it." I took it as a vote of confidence, rather than what it truly was, the first sign that I was considered dispensable despite my contributions. That fateful Thursday began like many others. I woke before my alarm, reviewed my presentation one more time over coffee, and chose my most professional outfit, a navy blue suit with a subtle pinstripe, a crisp white blouse, and my lucky earrings, small silver stars, my father had given me. When I graduated college, the presentation for Maxwell Corporation was scheduled for 2 p.m., which would give me plenty of time to prepare the conference room and review my notes. I arrived at the office at 6:45 a.m., the building still quiet except for the cleaning staff. The security guard nodded in recognition as I badged in, no longer surprised by my early arrivals. The elevator ride to the 14th floor gave me a moment to mentally rehearse key points of my presentation. When the doors opened, I was surprised to see April already there, hanging colorful banners across the entrance to our largest meeting space. "You are here early," I commented, setting my laptop bag on my desk and joining her. April turned a piece of tape stuck to her finger. "The retreat starts at 11 a.m., and Gregory wants everything perfect. You know how he gets about these team-building events." She studied my face, frowning slightly. "You look tired, Bridget. Are you feeling okay?" "Just the usual pre-presentation jitters," I assured her, helping to straighten a banner that read, "Innovatech Annual Retreat Building Tomorrow Together." The Maxwell meeting is huge. If we land this contract, it changes everything for the company. April sighed, stepping back to assess her decorating work. "And what about you? What does it change for you?" The question caught me off guard. "What do you mean?" "You have been running yourself into the ground for years. When was the last time you did something just for you? Not for the company, not for Gregory, just for Bridget." I opened my mouth to respond, but was interrupted by the ping of my phone. It was Gregory asking me to come to his office as soon as I arrived. "Duty calls," I said to April, forcing a smile. Gregory was reviewing the retreat agenda when I entered his office. He barely looked up when he delivered the news. "Maxwell just called. They need to push the meeting back to 4 p.m. Something about their flight being delayed." My heart sank. "But that is during the retreat." "Yes, unfortunate timing. You will still handle it, of course. The executive team will be at the retreat as planned." He finally looked up, his expression, leaving no room for discussion. "This is why I trust you with these things, Bridget. You always make it work." The rest of the morning was a blur of preparation. I triple-checked the presentation slides, reviewed the technical specifications one more time, and prepared detailed answers for every possible question. By noon, the office had largely emptied as most employees headed to the retreat venue, a luxury hotel 3 blocks away. My stomach growled, reminding me I had forgotten to eat breakfast. I grabbed a quick sandwich from the cafe across the street, eating at my desk while finalizing my notes. A mild discomfort started in my lower abdomen, but I dismissed it as hunger pains or perhaps stress. I took 2 antacids and continued working. By 3:30 p.m., the conference room was perfectly arranged, water bottles and company-branded notepads at each seat, presentation loaded on both the main computer and my laptop as backup, samples of our software interface printed as high-quality handouts. The mild discomfort in my abdomen had grown more persistent, but I pushed it aside, focusing instead on reviewing my opening remarks one final time. At exactly 4 p.m., the receptionist called to say the Maxwell representatives had arrived. Jackson Reeves, their chief technology officer, was a tall man with a friendly smile and firm handshake. Amanda Chen, their operations director, was more reserved but equally polite. I led them to the conference room, engaging in small talk about their flight and Seattle weather. "I understand the rest of your executive team is at a company event today," Jackson commented as we settled in. "Yes, but I am fully authorized to discuss all aspects of the potential partnership," I assured him, ignoring a sharper twinge in my side as I stood to begin the presentation. The first 15 minutes went perfectly. I outlined our company history, software capabilities, and implementation strategy. Jackson asked insightful questions that I answered with confidence. But as I moved to the section on customization options, the pain in my abdomen intensified dramatically. It was no longer a dull ache, but a stabbing sensation that made it difficult to stand straight. "Our platform offers 12 different integration points for your existing systems." I continued, gripping the edge of the table to steady myself. Sweat beaded on my forehead despite the room being comfortably cool. The words on my slides began to blur slightly. "Miss Peterson, are you all right?" Amanda asked, concern evident in her voice. "I am fine, thank you." I managed, though the pain was now radiating through my entire lower abdomen. It felt like someone was twisting a knife inside me. As you can see from this diagram, the implementation timeline would be approximately 16 weeks, with the first phase complete within. The room suddenly tilted. My vision narrowed to a pinpoint, and the last thing I remember was Jackson leaping from his chair as my knees buckled. I heard voices shouting my name, felt hands trying to break my fall, and then everything went black. When I regained partial consciousness, I was aware of chaos around me. Thomas was kneeling beside me, his face pale with worry. Diana was on the phone, her voice urgent. Yes, 14th floor. Innovatic Solutions. She collapsed during a meeting. No, she is not responsive. Jackson had placed his suit jacket under my head and was checking my pulse. Her heart rate is extremely rapid, he was saying, and her skin is clammy. The pain was overwhelming now, no longer something I could fight through with willpower. Each breath sent new waves of agony through my body. Through the haze of pain, my thoughts were still absurdly focused on the meeting. The presentation. The contract. What would Gregory say? The ambulance is on its way, Diana said, kneeling beside me and squeezing my hand. Hang in there, Bridget. The last clear memory I have before losing consciousness again was Thomas saying he would call Gregory. He needs to know, he insisted over my weak protests. Then darkness claimed me completely, the conference room and my carefully prepared presentation fading away as the paramedics arrived. White ceiling tiles and the antiseptic smell of hospital disinfectant greeted me when I next opened my eyes. A steady beeping from a monitor somewhere to my left kept time with my heartbeat. My throat felt dry, my thoughts foggy. A middle-aged man in a white coat noticed I was awake and approached my bedside. Miss Peterson, I am Dr. James. You are at Northwest Memorial Hospital. Do you remember what happened? I tried to speak, but my voice came out as a croak. A nurse quickly offered me water through a straw, and after a few sips, I managed meeting. I was in a meeting. Dr. James nodded. You collapsed during that meeting. You have a ruptured appendix that has caused a significant infection in your abdominal cavity. We need to perform emergency surgery immediately. The gravity of the situation slowly penetrated my medication-addled brain. Surgery. But I have to finish the presentation. The Maxwell contract. Miss Peterson, Dr. James said firmly, this is life-threatening. The infection could spread to your bloodstream, causing septic shock. We have already started you on powerful antibiotics, but surgery is essential and cannot wait. A nurse, her name tag reading Susan, gently touched my arm. Is there someone we should call Family A partner? The question highlighted how isolated I had become. My parents were a 2-hour flight away. I had no significant other, no siblings nearby. All my close connections were at work. Gregory Wallace, I finally said. My boss. His number is in my phone. Susan nodded and left the room, while Dr. James explained the surgical procedure. They would remove my appendix, clean the infection from my abdominal cavity, and possibly place drains to help clear any remaining infection. The surgery would take at least 2 hours, followed by several days in the hospital. As I was being prepped for surgery, Susan returned to my bedside. Her expression was carefully neutral, but something in her eyes made my heart sink before she even spoke. I reached Mr. Wallace, she said. I explained the situation and told him you were going into emergency surgery. And I prompted when she hesitated. Susan looked uncomfortable. He said, and I quote, I cannot leave right now. The annual company retreat is today. I emphasized that this was serious, that you needed immediate surgery, but he said someone named Thomas was already aware and would handle things. The words struck like physical blows. 5 years of dedication, countless weekends sacrificed, vacations canceled, family events missed. All for a company whose leader would not even step away from a party when I was fighting for my life on an operating table. Did he say he would come later? I asked, hating how small my voice sounded. Susan's expression softened with pity. He said to have you call him when you are recovered enough to discuss the status of your client meeting. Tears burned in my eyes, but I blinked them back. A medical technician arrived to transport me to the operating room, ending the conversation. As they wheeled me down the hallway, my thoughts were a jumble of disbelief, hurt, and a dawning realization about my place in the company I had given everything to. The next clear memory I have is waking up in the recovery room, pain throbbing through my abdomen despite the medication. Dr. James appeared again, explaining that the surgery had been more complicated than anticipated. The infection had spread significantly, requiring extensive cleaning of my abdominal cavity. I would need stronger antibiotics and a longer hospital stay than initially estimated. At least 2 weeks before you can return to work, he said firmly. And even then, you will need to take things very easy for several weeks afterward. 2 weeks away from the office seemed impossible. Who would handle my projects? What about the Maxwell contract? These thoughts circled in my mind as I drifted in and out of sleep for the rest of that day. The following afternoon, I was surprised to see April enter my hospital room carrying a small bouquet of flowers. Her eyes widened at my appearance, connected to various tubes and monitors. "You look like you got hit by a truck," she said, then immediately grimaced. "Sorry that came out wrong. How are you feeling?" "Like I got hit by a truck," I confirmed with a weak smile. "Thank you for coming." April set the flowers on the bedside table and pulled up a chair. "Thomas told us what happened. Everyone is worried about you." "Everyone, except Gregory," I said before I could stop myself. April's expression confirmed what I already knew. "He announced your medical emergency at the retreat, but then continued with the planned activities. The party went until midnight. There are photos all over the company's social media page." She showed me her phone, scrolling through images of my colleagues, enjoying a lavish dinner, participating in team-building games, and raising glasses and toasts. Gregory was front and center in many photos, smiling broadly, no sign of concern for an employee fighting for her life just a few blocks away. "What about the Maxwell meeting? Did someone else take over?" April hesitated. "Gregory told everyone the clients left when you collapsed and that the opportunity was probably lost. But Thomas said that is not true. Apparently this Jackson guy helped until the paramedics came and gave Thomas his card asking to be updated on your condition." This small act of humanity from a client I had just met contrasted sharply with Gregory's indifference. Before I could respond, Thomas and Diana appeared in the doorway carrying a large get-well basket. "The hospital survivor emerges," Thomas said, with forced cheerfulness, though his eyes betrayed his shock at my condition. "You gave us quite a scare, Bridget." Diana hugged me gently, careful of my IV lines. "The office is not the same without you. How long until you can come back and save us all from Gregory's micromanaging?" "Doctor says 2 weeks minimum," I replied, wincing as I shifted position. "I cannot imagine being away that long." Thomas exchanged glances with April. "Take the time you need to heal properly. We will hold down the fort." After they left, Dr. James returned with more details about my recovery. The infection had been severe enough to require a special course of antibiotics. Physical activity would be strictly limited for at least a month after discharge. Returning to work would need to be a gradual process, starting with just a few hours per day. That evening, my phone lit up with a message from Gregory. My heart jumped, thinking he was finally checking on my well-being. Instead, the message read, "Need the Maxwell presentation files. Where are they saved on the server? Also, did you complete the quarterly report? No. How are you feeling? No. Sorry I could not visit. Not even a simple, get well soon. Just work. Demands as if I were taking a casual day off rather than recovering from life-saving surgery." More messages followed throughout my hospital stay, all focused on work tasks, project updates, and file locations. April later told me that Gregory had instructed her to retrieve my laptop from my apartment, using the spare key I had given her for emergencies. "He said it was critical to access your files," she explained uncomfortably. "I did not want to, but he insisted it was for the good of the company." As I lay in that hospital bed watching nurses change IV bags and listening to the beep of monitors, something fundamental shifted inside me. The physical pain was intense, but it was nothing compared to the emotional wound of realizing I had dedicated years of my life to a company that saw me as nothing more than a replaceable cog in their machine. One night, unable to sleep due to discomfort, I found myself staring at the ceiling and asking, what was it all for? The missed family gatherings, the non-existent social life, the neglected health warnings, all sacrificed for a company that could not spare its leader for even an hour to check if I was alive or dead. That night I made a decision. Whatever happened next, I would never again place a job above my own well-being or give my loyalty to those who had not earned it. Exactly 2 weeks after my surgery, I stood outside the Innovatech, building my hand resting protectively over my still tender abdomen. The doctor had cleared me for limited work hours with strict instructions to avoid stress and heavy lifting. A wave of apprehension washed over me as I looked up at the gleaming glass facade. For the first time in 5 years, I felt like a stranger approaching this familiar place. The security guard did a double take when I badged in. "Miss Peterson, good to see you back on your feet. Heard you had quite an ordeal." "Thank you, Carl," I replied, touched by his genuine concern, something I had yet to receive from my own boss. The elevator ride to the 14th floor felt longer than usual. I had dressed carefully that morning, choosing a comfortable yet professional outfit that would not put pressure on my healing incision. My usual high heels had been replaced with sensible flats, and I carried a lighter bag to avoid straining my body. When the elevator doors opened, I was greeted by a startlingly different energy than the one I had left 2 weeks ago. Colleagues who normally would wave or stop for a quick chat seemed to avoid eye contact. Conversations hushed as I passed. It felt as though I had become a ghost in a place I once considered a second home. I rounded the corner to my workstation and stopped dead in my tracks. A young woman with auburn hair sat at my desk typing rapidly on a keyboard. My personal items, the small plant I had nurtured for years, the framed certificate of my project management certification, the artisan coffee mug April had given me last Christmas, all were gone. In their place were unfamiliar trinkets. A different plant, a brightly colored water bottle, a photo frame, showing a group of people I did not recognize. "Excuse me," I said, my voice sounding strangely calm despite the turmoil inside me. "I think you were at my desk." The woman looked up, surprise evident on her face. "Oh, you must be Bridget. I am Lauren. Mr. Wallace assigned me to this workspace last week." Before I could respond, Gregory's voice came from behind me. "Bridget, you are back earlier than expected." I turned to face him, noticing he made no move to welcome me with a handshake or any gesture of greeting. "Doctor cleared me for limited hours," I explained. "I thought it best to get back as soon as possible given my project load." Gregory's smile did not reach his eyes. "Admirable dedication. Let us talk in my office." As I followed him, I caught April's gaze across the floor. She mouthed, "I am sorry," with a pained expression that only increased my sense of foreboding. Once inside his office, Gregory closed the door and gestured to a chair. "It is good to see you recovered." That was quite a dramatic scene during the Maxwell presentation. No inquiry about my health, no acknowledgement of his absence during my medical crisis, just a reference to the dramatic scene that had inconvenienced the company. "Thank you for your concern," I said, unable to keep a hint of sarcasm from my voice. The ruptured appendix and abdominal infection were indeed quite dramatic. If he caught my tone, he showed no sign of it. "While you were away, we had to redistribute your workload. Lauren has been handling some of your projects temporarily." I noticed she is at my desk. "Yes, well, we needed her to have access to your files and systems. Just a temporary arrangement until we see how your recovery progresses." He leaned back in his chair. "We have set up a workspace for you in the east corner. It is quieter there, which should help with your recovery." The east corner was the furthest point from the windows, tucked away from the main workflow of the office, typically used for interns or temporary contractors. My new status could not have been made clearer if Gregory had written Demo Ted across my forehead. "And my projects?" I asked, struggling to maintain my professional demeanor. "Lauren will continue with the Maxwell account for now. You can take over some of the smaller clients as you ease back in. I have scheduled a training session for you tomorrow to refresh you on our project management protocols." Training. As if I had not written half of those protocols myself. As if I had not trained dozens of new hires on those very systems. Back at my new desk, a small cramped space with an outdated monitor, and a chair that had seen better days, I found my personal items packed in a cardboard box. The plant had not been watered and was wilting badly. As I tried to log into my computer, I discovered my access permissions had been downgraded. Files I had created and managed for years now showed access denied when I attempted to open them. Around 11 a.m., an email notification appeared on my screen. It was from Jackson Reeves at Maxwell Corporation, the client who had been present during my collapse. "Miss Peterson, I hope this message finds you recovered from your health emergency. Our team at Maxwell was impressed with what we saw of your presentation before the unfortunate interruption. We would like to continue our discussion at your convenience. Please let me know when you might be available." A small flame of validation flickered inside me. The client had not been scared away by my medical emergency. They were still interested. I began typing a response only to be interrupted by Gregory appearing at my new desk. I will handle the Maxwell correspondence, he said, his tone, leaving no room for discussion. They are scheduled for a follow-up meeting tomorrow. Lauren will be presenting. But Jackson specifically reached out to me, I protested. You are not cleared for client meetings yet, Gregory replied smoothly. Doctor's orders. You need to focus on your recovery. Dr. James had said no such thing. His only restrictions had been on physical activity and working excessive hours. Client meetings were well within my capabilities. Later that afternoon, I stopped by the break room for tea and overheard a conversation from the adjacent conference room where the door had been left slightly ajar. She does not look ready to resume full responsibilities, Gregory was saying to someone. The medical leave documentation says she can work with minor restrictions, replied a woman's voice. I recognized as Rachel from Human Resources. Yes, but there is physical recovery, and then there is being truly ready to handle the pressures of senior management. Gregory continued. We need to consider what is best for the company long term. We should start exploring permanent replacement options. Rachel's response was too quiet for me to hear, but Gregory's next statement came through. Clearly, Lauren has shown remarkable aptitude. With a few more months of training, she could be ready to take over permanently. I stepped away, my tea forgotten, a cold weight settling in my stomach. 5 years of dedication and excellence erased by 2 weeks of medical leave. The betrayal was so complete, so callous, that it momentarily left me breathless. Back at my isolated desk, Thomas stopped by, ostensibly to welcome me back, but his expression was troubled. I am glad you are okay, he said sincerely. It was scary seeing you collapse like that. Thank you for calling the ambulance, I replied, and for visiting me in the hospital. It meant a lot. Thomas glanced around to ensure no one was within earshot. You should know, Gregory told the team, your recovery might affect your ability to handle stress. He suggested you might need to step back from leadership roles for a while. Before I could respond to this new betrayal, April appeared with a cup of my favorite tea. Her expression was equally grim. Lauren has been invited to the executive strategy meeting tomorrow, she whispered. And there are rumors she is being fast-tracked for a promotion. Gregory has been mentoring her personally. As the day wore on, it became increasingly clear that my position had been fundamentally undermined during my absence. Projects I had nurtured for years were now collaborative efforts with Lauren taking the lead. Client relationships I had built were being transferred under the guise of distributing the workload more evenly. By 5 p.m., sitting in my isolated corner, with diminished system access and a growing pile of administrative busywork that was clearly beneath my position, I had reached a conclusion that both pained and liberated me. My time at Innovatic was over, not because I chose to leave, but because I had already been replaced. The only question remaining was how I would respond to this betrayal. That evening I sat in my apartment surrounded by sticky notes and my personal laptop. If Gregory thought my medical emergency had diminished my strategic thinking abilities, he was sorely mistaken. I was not going to resign in an emotional outburst or confront him publicly. Such reactions would only validate his assessment that I was too fragile to handle pressure. No, my response would be calculated, methodical, and ultimately far more impactful. The first step was understanding my legal position. The next morning, I took a doctor's appointment that was actually a consultation with Patricia Winters, an employment attorney recommended by a college friend. Based on what you have described, Patricia said, after listening to my story, there are potential grounds for constructive dismissal and disability discrimination claims. The sudden removal from your position during medical leave is particularly problematic from a legal standpoint. I do not want a messy legal battle, I explained. I want a clean exit on my terms. Patricia nodded. Then my advice is to document everything. Every conversation, every email, every change in your duties or access. Create a paper trail that shows a pattern of behavior. This gives you leverage without necessarily having to use it. Following her advice, I started keeping a detailed journal. When Gregory explained a basic client management process to me as if I were a new hire, I documented it. When I was excluded from the weekly leadership meeting I had attended for 3 years, I noted it. When Lauren was given credit for the successful completion of a project I had developed from scratch, I recorded that too. Simultaneously, I began quietly updating my resume and LinkedIn profile. I researched companies with strong ethical cultures and employee protection policies. I practiced interview questions during my lunch breaks, recording myself on my phone to refine my responses. A stroke of insight led me to reach out directly to Jackson Reeves at Maxwell Corporation. I sent an email from my personal account explaining the situation professionally without descending into complaints about Innovatech. While I was recovering, it seems the company has decided to restructure some responsibilities, I wrote. I wanted to personally thank you for your concern during my medical emergency and let you know that I valued the opportunity to present our solutions to Maxwell. Jackson's response came within hours, expressing concern about my situation and suggesting we meet for coffee. During that meeting at a cafe 3 blocks from my apartment, he revealed something surprising. We were not impressed with the follow-up presentation, he admitted. Your replacement seemed unfamiliar with the technical aspects we were most interested in. More importantly, the way Innovatech handled your situation raised red flags about their company culture. He leaned forward, lowering his voice slightly. Maxwell is actually expanding our Seattle operations. We are looking for someone to head our project implementation team. Someone with exactly your experience and technical knowledge. Would you be interested in discussing the position? The opportunity was perfect, almost too perfect. A senior role at a larger, more established company with better benefits and a substantial salary increase. The interview process was thorough but comfortable with each conversation, confirming that Maxwell's corporate culture was everything. Innovatech was not supportive, ethical, and focused on long-term employee development. 3 weeks after my return to Innovatech, I received a formal offer from Maxwell's Senior Director of Implementation, a 40% salary increase, comprehensive health benefits, and a flexible work arrangement during my continued recovery. I accepted immediately, but negotiated a start date 3 weeks out. I needed time to execute the remainder of my plan. Back at Innovatech, I began organizing all my work with meticulous attention to detail. I created comprehensive documentation for every project I had touched with step-by-step instructions that even a novice could follow. I organized shared drives, labeled files clearly, and created process flowcharts for complex procedures. Gregory noticed this flurry of organizational activity. It is good to see you taking initiative with the documentation, he commented, misinterpreting my actions as an attempt to prove my value. This will be helpful for the team moving forward. Just trying to ensure everything runs smoothly, I replied with a neutral smile. During this time, I also began reconnecting with people outside work. I called my parents for the first time in months, without cutting the conversation short due to work demands. I reconnected with college friends I had neglected. I even joined a support group for professionals recovering from burnout, where I met others with similar stories of toxic workplaces and misplaced loyalty. One evening, I had dinner with my cousin Melissa, whom I had not seen in nearly a year despite her living just 30 minutes away. You seem different, she observed as we shared dessert. More present. For years it felt like you were physically at family gatherings but mentally still at work. Nearly dying tends to shift your perspective, I replied with a rueful smile. I wasted so much time and energy on people who saw me as nothing more than a resource to exploit. As my departure date approached, I carefully planned my final day. I would complete all outstanding tasks, submit my resignation letter to Human Resources at 4:30 p.m., leave a detailed letter for Gregory, and walk out with my head held high. No dramatic scene, no burning bridges, just a professional exit that would leave Innovatech scrambling to fill the void I would create. The night before my final day, I felt something I had not experienced in years, a sense of calm, certainty. No anxiety about emails I should be checking, no worry about projects I should be advancing, just the quiet confidence of someone who knows their worth and refuses to stay where it is not recognized. My final day at Innovatech dawned bright and clear, a perfect Seattle spring morning. I dressed with particular care, choosing a sharp charcoal gray suit that projected confidence and professionalism. I arrived at 6:30 a.m. earlier than anyone except the cleaning staff, giving me several hours of uninterrupted time to finalize my exit plan. The office was peaceful in the early morning light. I moved methodically through my tasks, checking off items from the detailed list I had prepared. First, I completed the transition documents for all my projects, even those that had been reassigned to Lauren. These were not merely basic handover notes, but comprehensive guides that included context history, key contacts, and potential challenges for each project. I organized all digital files with clear naming conventions and intuitive folder structures. I updated the contact information for every client I had worked with, including notes on their communication preferences and important historical details. I even prepared templates for common client requests to make the transition as smooth as possible for whoever would take over. By 10:30 a.m., my digital house was in perfect order. I moved on to physical documents, organizing them in labeled folders, and creating an index for quick reference. Nothing was overlooked, from contract amendments to meeting notes. Anyone stepping into my role would find everything they needed at their fingertips. At noon April, Thomas and Diana insisted on taking me to lunch. We walked to our favorite cafe 2 blocks away, the same place we had celebrated countless project completions and company milestones. "You seem suspiciously cheerful today," Thomas remarked as we waited for our food. "Usually after a morning of filing and organizing, you are grumbling about administrative busywork." I shrugged, offering a non-committal smile, just trying to get things in order. April studied me intently. "You are leaving, aren't you?" The directness of her question caught me off guard. I hesitated, then nodded slightly. "Today is my last day." Diana gasped. Gregory finally pushed too far. "Let us just say I found somewhere my contributions will be valued appropriately." I looked at each of them in turn. "I will miss working with all of you. You made even the hardest days bearable." Thomas raised his water glass. "To Bridget, who deserves every success and happiness." We clinked glasses, and for a moment I felt a pang of sadness about leaving these colleagues who had become friends. But the decision was made, and I knew it was the right one. Back at the office, I spent the afternoon wrapping up final details. At 4:15 p.m., I printed my resignation letter and walked to the Human Resources Department. Rachel looked up in surprise when I placed the envelope on her desk. "Effective immediately," I said quietly. She opened the envelope, skimmed the contents, and her eyes widened. "Bridget, is this because of the changes since your return? I know the transition has been challenging, but surely we can work something out." "My decision is final," I replied calmly. "I have completed all my current assignments and prepared detailed documentation for my projects." Rachel's professional mask slipped slightly. "Gregory should know about this immediately. He will want to discuss." "I have prepared a separate letter for Gregory," I cut in. "Everything he needs to know is in there." Returning to my desk, I placed a sealed envelope in the center of Gregory's otherwise pristine desk. His calendar showed he was in meetings until 5:30 p.m., perfect timing for my exit. The envelope contained 5 pages of carefully crafted text, the culmination of 5 years of dedication and 2 weeks of strategic planning. The letter began professionally enough, thanking the company for the opportunities I had been given. It then transitioned to a detailed accounting of my contributions, the 12 major clients I had secured representing over $20 million in revenue, the 18 successful projects I had led, all completed on time and under budget, the 32 process improvements I had implemented, saving the company an estimated $800,000 annually. The middle section addressed the events following my medical emergency with clinical precision. When I collapsed during the Maxwell presentation and required emergency surgery for a life-threatening condition, I discovered the true value Innovatic places on its employees. While a potential client who had just met me showed concern for my well-being, my boss of 5 years chose to attend a company party rather than visit an employee in critical condition. I detailed the systematic dismantling of my position during my absence and the clear message sent by my reassignment to an isolated desk with reduced responsibilities. There was no anger in my words, just a calm recitation of facts that, when presented together, painted a damning picture of callous leadership and toxic corporate culture. The final section delivered the news that would turn Gregory's face pale when he eventually read it. "I have accepted a senior leadership position with Maxwell Corporation, who reached out to me directly following their disappointing follow-up meeting with Innovatech. Additionally, I should inform you that clients representing approximately 30% of Innovatech's current revenue have expressed interest in following me to my new position, citing concerns about project continuity and corporate values." This was not an empty threat. During my quiet exit planning, 4 major clients had indeed reached out after hearing rumors of my potential departure. 2 had explicitly stated they would move their business wherever I went. I had never solicited these commitments, but I also had not discouraged them. The letter concluded, "Thank you for the valuable lesson that loyalty should be reserved for those who demonstrate they deserve it. I wish Innovatech continued success and growth, though, that may prove challenging in the coming fiscal year." I signed it simply Bridget Peterson, with no emotional closing, no sincerely or best regards. Those formalities seemed unnecessary after everything that had transpired. At exactly 5 p.m., I collected my few remaining personal items, shut down my computer for the final time, and walked toward the elevator. Several colleagues noticed my departure with my personal effects and exchanged knowing glances. I kept my head high, my expression neutral, acknowledging those I passed with a small nod, but offering no explanations. As the elevator doors were closing, April darted in slightly breathless. "I wanted to catch you before you left," she said. "Gregory just went into his office." "Good timing on my part, then," I replied with a small smile. April's phone buzzed. She glanced at it and let out a low whistle. "Thomas just texted. Gregory is reading your letter right now. He says, and I quote, 'His face just went completely pale, and he is frantically calling someone.'" A sense of calm satisfaction washed over me. Not vengeful glee, not bitter triumph, just the quiet confirmation that my carefully orchestrated exit had achieved its intended effect. "I wish I could see that," April admitted. "After how he treated you, he deserves whatever is coming." The elevator reached the lobby and we stepped out together. "This is not about revenge," I told her. "It is about recognizing my own value and choosing to be somewhere it is appreciated." We hugged goodbye in front of the building, promising to stay in touch. As I walked away from Innovatech for the final time, I felt lighter than I had in years, as if I had finally set down a burden I had been carrying for too long. My phone began ringing before I had gone 2 blocks. Gregory's name flashed on the screen. I silenced it without answering and continued my walk home in the gentle spring evening, already looking forward to the next chapter of my professional journey. 3 months later, I stood by the floor-to-ceiling windows of my new office at Maxwell Corporation, watching the Seattle skyline shimmer in the summer heat. My spacious corner office was a far cry from the isolated desk I had been relegated to at Innovatech. More importantly, the culture difference was like stepping from shadow into sunlight. My first day at Maxwell had set the tone for everything that followed. Jackson, now my direct supervisor, had personally shown me around, introducing me to team members, and ensuring my workstation was ergonomically set up to accommodate my still healing body. The company had arranged for reduced hours during my first month, gradually increasing my workload as my strength returned. When I suggested improvements to their implementation process, based on my experience, my ideas were not only welcomed but quickly adopted. "You have transformed our onboarding timeline," Jackson commented during our weekly check-in. "The Henderson project is 2 weeks ahead of schedule because of your streamlined approach." "The team deserves the credit," I replied, though I could not help feeling proud of what we had accomplished together. "A good leader creates systems that allow their team to excel," Jackson said, something your previous employer clearly failed to recognize. Speaking of Innovatech, April still kept me updated on the aftermath of my departure. According to her latest text message, the company had lost nearly 40% of its revenue in the 3 months since I left. 3 of my major clients had indeed followed me to Maxwell, and 2 others had simply taken their business elsewhere, citing concerns about Innovatech's stability. Gregory had made increasingly desperate attempts to contact me in the weeks following my resignation. First came the angry voicemails demanding explanations, then emails offering my position back with a modest raise, and finally, a formal letter from the company's legal team suggesting a mutually beneficial consultation arrangement that would have effectively paid me to help them retain the clients who were leaving. I had responded to none of these communications. The employment attorney I consulted assured me I had no legal obligation to do so, having never signed a non-compete agreement or solicited clients directly. The exodus of business was simply the natural consequence of relationships I had built through years of excellent service relationships that followed me because of trust I had earned. Lauren, my replacement at Innovatech, had apparently lasted only 2 months in the role before resigning herself. April forwarded me Lauren's parting email to the team, which diplomatically cited differences in management philosophy, but clearly hinted at the impossible expectations and lack of support that had driven her out. My physical recovery had progressed well with proper rest and reduced stress. The scar from my surgery had faded to a thin line, a reminder of how close I had come to a much worse outcome. More importantly, my emotional and psychological healing had been profound. I had reconnected with my parents, flying them to Seattle for a week-long visit, during which I showed them the city properly for the first time, without constantly checking emails or taking work calls. I had taken up yoga and meditation practices that helped me process the anger and betrayal I had initially felt toward Gregory and Innovatech. Gradually, those negative emotions had transformed into something more valuable: clarity about my worth and boundaries I would never again allow to be crossed. My work-life balance had shifted dramatically. I left the office by 6 p.m. Most days had reclaimed my weekends for personal activities, and had even started dating again after years of putting my romantic life on indefinite hold. My apartment now contained evidence of hobbies and interests beyond workbooks I was actually reading, not just purchasing with the intention to read someday. Hiking gear for weekend explorations of Washington's beautiful trails, even a small keyboard where I was relearning the piano skills from my childhood. One rainy Tuesday, I was surprised to encounter Lauren at a coffee shop near the Maxwell offices. She recognized me immediately, approaching my table with a tentative smile. "Bridget, I am not sure if you remember me." "Of course," I replied, gesturing to the empty chair across from me. "Please join me." Lauren looked healthier than I remembered, the perpetual tension around her eyes gone. "I wanted to apologize," she said, after ordering her coffee. "I had no idea about the circumstances of your return to Innovatech. Gregory told me you had requested a less demanding role due to health concerns." I smiled without bitterness. "That sounds like Gregory. What are you doing now?" "I just started at Meridian Software last month," she said. "The culture is completely different. My manager actually asked what time I prefer to start my day instead of expecting me at the crack of dawn." We chatted amicably for nearly an hour. Before leaving, Lauren hesitated, then said, "Your letter became legendary, you know. Someone in HR leaked the general content. It changed things for those who stayed, made them question the sacrifices they were making." That conversation reinforced something I had been reflecting on during my recovery. Sometimes our most significant impact comes not from what we achieve while staying in difficult situations, but from how we choose to leave them. The most profound lesson from my ordeal was about the true nature of loyalty. For years, I had confused loyalty with self-sacrifice, believing that my worth was measured by how much I was willing to endure for the company. Now I understood that genuine loyalty is reciprocal, earned through mutual respect and support. Gregory's betrayal during my medical emergency had not destroyed my capacity for professional dedication. It had simply redirected it toward a company and people who deserved it. I no longer harbored anger toward Gregory. In a strange way, I was grateful for the clarifying moment his actions had provided. Without that stark revelation of how little I truly mattered to him and the company, I might have continued sacrificing my health, relationships, and happiness for years longer. As I looked out over the Seattle skyline from my new office, I felt a deep sense of peace. The path that had led me here had been painful but necessary. Sometimes it takes losing what you thought was important to discover what truly matters. Have you ever experienced a moment that completely changed how you viewed your job or your worth in the workplace? What would you have done in my situation? I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If my story resonated with you, please like and subscribe to show your support. And if you know someone who might be struggling with similar workplace challenges, share this video with them as a reminder that sometimes the bravest thing we can do is walk away from situations that no longer serve us. Thank you for listening to my journey, and remember, your health and well-being should always come first, no matter how important your job seems. Your worth is not determined by your productivity or your willingness to sacrifice yourself for a paycheck.